There's something that happens in business that I was not aware of because I wasn't an entrepreneur, and it's called a plateau. I started walking around with magnets in my pocket. Anytime that I reached my hand into my pocket, I would remind myself that I need to get on the right frequency of what I want my life to be. Envision yourself with that watch. And so like I had all these AP watches, the Rolexes, I had all of them up there. And I'm like, yes, bring it to me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another great interview with the one and only Jon Clash. He's been on this channel before. Last time we talked about Santeria and his experiences with Santeria. And today now we are talking to him as an author. So he released a book, The Law of Attraction. I haven't yet got to read it, so I'm looking forward to being able to read it. It just came to my house, I think, like a day or two ago. So looking forward to read it. But today we're going to be talking all about law of attraction, New Ageism, and how they coincide together. If that sounds interesting to you, stay tuned. And of course, subscribe and all that good stuff if you haven't already. Jon, let's get into it.
All right.
Let's jump into it and tell us a little bit about the book. Tell us about what is law of attraction, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so law of attraction is a new age / new thought. I'll get into what that is in a bit. Philosophy in where they believe that like attracts like, right? And I know it's a very simplistic statement, but just work with me here. Meaning like thoughts attract those thoughts to you. So in a completely like 7th grade reading level explanation, your thoughts are frequencies that go out into the universe, and those frequencies are on a specific thing that you would like to attract, or even if you do not know that it's on a frequency, you're attracting something. So your thoughts go out into the universe and you are attracting to yourself whatever your predominant thoughts are. So if you're constantly thinking about a Lamborghini, you are going to be attracting a Lamborghini to you. If that were true, I would have a Lamborghini, right? If you're constantly thinking about the woman of your dreams, you'll eventually attract that woman of your dreams to you. If you're thinking positive thoughts about your body weight and that you're at the perfect weight, you are attracting your perfect weight to you. If you're thinking all the time focused on $1 million, you will attract $1 million to you. So whatever you're sending out is coming back to you. You send it out to the universe, it comes back to you. And as long as you remain on that frequency of what it is you're desiring, you will attract or manifest that into your life, because the universe responds to your thoughts. It's like a machine, right? It doesn't have a what's interesting is they'll say that it's a force, but then they talk about the force as if this force is an actual being, but they look at it like it's a force that just responds to what it is you're thinking. All right. So if you're thinking something negative, you're going to bring negative stuff to you. If you're thinking something positive, you're going to bring positive stuff to you. And you constantly have to be thinking about what it is you want in your life, because the second you stop thinking and focusing on that, you start attracting, it starts repelling from you again. So I know I said 7th grade reading level, but that was not 7th grade.
So that is so if I understand you correctly, if I were to wake up every morning and every day and just constantly think to myself of all the things I ever wanted and like basically realize them in my mind, like I am rich, I am this, I am that, and I just constantly repeat that in my brain, I am actively bringing towards me the things I want.
Yes, but you also have to feel it.
All right. You have to feel it.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm in trouble because
I know.
it's hard for me to make me feel things.
I know it's one of those. So this is how they start introducing unfalsifiable claims, because they're like, hey, you may be thinking it, but are you actually feeling as if you already have it? Because that's the state that you have to be in. You have to be in the state of already having it in order for you to get it, right? So when I used to be involved in the law of attraction and really believe this stuff, I would sit in my car and close my eyes and picture the car as a Lamborghini, not when I'm driving, but like, when I'm parked, just picturing it as a Lamborghini. I remember when I would go into my apartment, I would just imagine that I'm walking into my $1 million mansion and sitting there in that moment and feeling it and visualizing it. And that feeling is kind of like it's like hitting the turbocharge of attracting something to you. So thinking it is good, but feeling it is what really, really brings it to you.
Okay. So where did this law of attraction, like, where did this whole philosophy spring out of? Like, because it's hard for me to imagine that someone just wakes up one day and thinks to themselves, like, you know what, if I think of something hard enough, it'll eventually come to me. Like, regardless, by how it sounds, regardless of the actions and decisions you make. Like, if you think and feel that you're going to have a ripped six-pack and be muscular without ever going to the gym, it'll somehow happen. Just seems counterintuitive. So how did this philosophy even come about?
Yeah, so I'll get into how the philosophy came out, but just you're saying how counterintuitive it is. It's so counterintuitive. There's a chapter in the book The Secret, which is one of these books that made the law of attraction popular, and it talks about how Rhonda Byrne, who's the author of The Secret, she talks about how she can eat whatever she wants and she doesn't gain any weight. She stays at her perfect weight because she doesn't think fat thoughts. And the only reason that you're fat is because you're thinking fat thoughts. And I'm like, man, I can't believe I used to believe this stuff. But so where it came from originally is it's rooted in New Thought and New Age philosophy, right? So the first time the words law of attraction were ever put next to each other in a sentence was in this book called The Great Harmonia by Andrew Jackson Davis. And he was just an American spiritist. But the law of attraction philosophy was kind of started by this woman named, not started, but really brought to the mainstream by a woman named Helena Blavatsky, right? And this woman was a proud Luciferian. Just Google quotes on Satan from Helena Blavatsky. It's bananas. She venerated Satan. She said that he and the Holy Ghost are equal. She said that Satan is the only God and the only God of this world, and that he's our true savior. Lucifer is our true savior. These are things that she said, right? So me, when I found out all this stuff, I'm like, wait a minute. So we're believing something that a woman who venerated Lucifer, Satan, we're believing something that she taught. And that was one of my like, oh nah, this is bugged out. But then it also, if you look into Phineas Quimby, who is looked at as the father of the New Thought movement, he is somebody who perpetuated all of this as well. And then it just expanded from there. So the secret itself, the law of attraction itself is said to be a New Thought philosophy. But if you dig into what New Thought philosophy is, it's very similar to New Age philosophy, and they kind of bounce back and forth. People who practice and talk about the law of attraction, they bounce back and forth between New Thought and New Age. They kind of just mix and match it. I think that when they're pandering to a Christian audience, they speak more New Thought-ish, and when they're pandering to everybody else, it's more New Age-ish. Now, both of these views, so New Age is pantheism, meaning everything is God. New Thought is panentheism, more so the strong panentheism, right? In which it's basically everything is God, right? Except they believe that the universe is an extension or a manifestation of God, in which New Age believes that the universe is God. So in New Thought, it being an extension of God, that means that it still is God, but like an extension. But in New Age, the universe is eternal, and both of these philosophies believe that the universe is eternal.
And if I'm not mistaken, sometimes pantheism will also believe that at one point there may not have been an earth, but God created it, but he created it in his spirit. Like, literally, it's just his spirit that he created, basically.
Yeah, it's an extension, right? I
Yeah.
have a diagram in my book, and the panentheism one looks like an avocado, right? Because it's an extension, but then also the universe is sitting in God. It's a weird thing. They have a lot of self-contradictory statements. You know, they say one thing over here that contradicts with this thing over here, and they'll say them right next to each other. You won't even pick up that they contradict each other if you're not paying attention.
So it sounds like this. It sounds like the belief system, the law of attraction belief system, rooted back in New Thought, New Ageism, which then seems to also have ties with, as you're saying, at least the law of attraction one does, with Luciferian mentality.
Essentially, I'm sorry to cut you off, but
go.
But you know, Luciferianism is, you know, there are people in Satanism who do worship the actual deity of Satan, you know, the actual person of Satan, but the overall occultism and Satanism and New Age spirituality and New Thought is you are essentially God, right? Because even if you go back to Satan, you know, tricking Eve into eating the apple, Satan did not care if Eve worshipped him. You know, he tricked her into believing that she could be like God, right? And this is what all of these worldviews do: is they make you worship yourself as God. You are the center of the universe. You actually are the universe, and the universe is God. So that essentially makes you God as well. Now, as far as being tied back to Luciferianism and Satanism, all of it is. It's not just law of attraction. I'll grab this this quote from Anton LaVey. Let me just open this book right here, my book, shameless plug. So Anton LaVey wrote the book, The Satanic Bible, The Satanic Rituals, The Devil's Notebook, The Satanic Witch, and he was the most prominent figure in Satanism in America. And this is what he says about New Age spirituality. He says, in the scores of books lining the shelves of New Age bookstores, there are instructions for guided meditations, creative visualizations, out-of-body experiences, getting in touch with your spirit guides, fortune telling by cards, crystal balls, or the stars. What if Satanists reclaimed these for their own dark purposes and integrated them into rituals dedicated to the devil where they rightfully belong? New Agers have freely drawn all manner of satanic material, adapting it to their own hypocritical purposes. But in truth, all New Age labeling is, again, trying to play the devil's game without using his infernal name. So you don't got to believe me that that Satanism, that New Age spirituality is satanic. That is the most prominent satanic figure, probably besides Aleister Crowley, stating how New Age is just Satanism repackaged.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty crazy to think about. So like all the thing, like, so that's common then within New Ageism and law of attraction for people to partake in like horoscopes and all the things you mentioned. So that is actually like really common. Like in your experience with it, is that what was taking place as well?
Yeah, well, that's why I called the book Law of Attraction a gateway drug to spiritual heroin, because the law of attraction, I look at it as like just the first bite when Eve bit into the forbidden fruit. Like it was just one bite, but that bite just opened up the floodgates of sin, right? And well, Adam's bite, technically, if you want to get all theologically sound, Adam's bite opened up the floodgates, but that was the precursor to Adam's. I just don't want some YouTube theologian coming on here and ripping me apart. So I look at the law of attraction as that. It's just a gateway drug to all of these other spiritual practices. And I've witnessed this not only in my own life, but in the life of my friends who got even further into this stuff than I did, right? I stayed pretty like law of attraction, some crystals, guided meditation. I pretty much stayed in that area. I didn't go all the way down the New Age rabbit hole. I researched all the way down the new age rabbit hole, but I didn't participate in it. Like these things that they teach you to do in order to gain enlightenment go from something as simple as, oh yeah, try doing some yoga, or try meditating, or try this guided meditation, or try these new affirmations, these things that look harmless. But then when those things don't work anymore, when you're not getting the spiritual high that you initially got when you first started doing that, you start looking to more extreme things. And this brings you down a rabbit hole of chasing spiritual highs, which is why I call it spiritual heroin, because most heroin addicts aren't even doing heroin to be high anymore. Now they're just doing it so that way they don't feel bad anymore. So that way they don't have the withdrawals. And that's what this type of spirituality becomes. In my research, I found out that people spent $10,000 to go on spiritual warrior retreats from one of the contributors of The Secret. They went and spent $10,000 of their money to go on this spiritual warrior retreat. And then 3 of them died at the retreat.
Wow.
So
how'd they die?
So there's something called a sweat lodge, right? And there's just all different weird things that happen at these spiritual retreats. They have you, simple things like, walking over, burning coal. That's like a regular thing. But they'll do like sleep deprivation and fasting. And there was also this a lady committed suicide during this exercise, but they made you go act like you were homeless for a certain amount of time, and a woman committed suicide during that part of the seminar. But the people who died in the sweat lodge, a sweat lodge is basically what it sounds like. It's a Native American or indigenous practice in which you're in a room that is just designed to make you sweat, super, super, super hot. So these 3 people went in there and died in the sweat lodge. Now, you don't just end up there because some kid was in town that day with a flyer saying, hey, we're doing this sweat lodge spiritual warrior retreat, come through. No, you end up spending $10,000 on this stuff because you got introduced to something that led you to something else, that led you to something else, that led you to something else. And you're chasing this ever elusive status of enlightenment, this carrot that's at the end of a guru stick, and you're chasing it and chasing it and chasing it, spending all of your money, all of your time, all of your energy on this stuff, only to end up in a sweat lodge dead. And so that's why, people think, oh, why don't you just let people practice the law of attraction? It's not about the law of attraction. It's about what comes after it that bothers me. And also, above all, yes, you're getting scammed out of your money. Yes, you're getting scammed into, participating in sometimes even sexual experiences that you're just doing them in order to, to raise your consciousness level, or because you're looking for somebody to heal you, or you're going to heal them. All of these experiences, yeah, those things are bad. But the worst thing is that this is the beginning of a path leading you away from Christ. And it doesn't matter what happens to you in life, good or bad. What really matters most is, where are you putting your faith? Are you putting your faith in crystals? You putting your faith in the law of attraction, all of this other stuff? Or are you putting your faith in Christ? Because only one of those leads to eternal life, So that's the most dangerous part about it. And that's why I wrote the book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what was your experience with the law of attraction then? Because you're talking a lot about some of these other people's experiences. What was your personal experience with it?
So I had originally got introduced to it by The Secret, right? One of my friends invited me over. He was like, yo, has a Yonkers term for like bro. He's like, yo, I gotta talk to you. We got this thing, you gotta see it. Like, it's just crazy. It's gonna solve all of our problems. We about to be rich. And I'm like, all right, let's go see it. And then I get to my boy Lance's house, and he pops in this DVD. Lance didn't pop in the DVD, our other friend did. Pops in this DVD, and then there's like this Australian lady talking, and it was just this like epic intro and this secret that's been hidden for thousands of years that abundance and blah, 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 blah. And I watched it all and I was like, yo, this is crazy. I was so excited, right? Learned all about the law of attraction and how you could attract anything that you want. And my favorite part about it was you can attract a good parking spot in every parking lot. That was definitely high on my list. But so after that, I went to sleep that day. And then I forgot all about it, right? I completely forgot all about the law of attraction and this nonsense. I just went back to, chasing the music dream and working and all that stuff. It wasn't until I got into business, right? When I got into network marketing and I killed it, right? I really was doing very well. Long story short, I went from driving a 98 Ford Thunderbird that the wheel fell off of to 5 Series BMW, from never traveling to traveling all over the place, places my friends never even heard of before. I'm going to them. Then also, I was sleeping on a cot and like eating ramen noodles every single day prior to that, because I had got laid off. And now I'm making more money a month than what I need to survive. And I don't even have a job. So I'm like, yo, this is lit, right? But there's something that happens in business that I was not aware of because I wasn't an entrepreneur, and it's called a plateau, right? And a plateau is just when things level out, right? Things aren't exploding in the way that they once were. You're not losing money, but you're kind of just leveled out, right? So when I leveled out, I started reaching out to the people that I knew were more successful than me. And I was like, hey, I'm stuck. I want to get to the next level. What do I do? And they were like, oh, you got to, where's your focus? How's your mind? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I think it's pretty good. Why? What's up? And they were like, you watch The Secret. And when they said watch The Secret, it was like, oh my gosh, how did I forget about this thing? Blah, blah, blah. And then that sent me down, the rabbit hole. I must have listened to The Secret on audiobook 100,000 times. Everybody that was in my sales team, I feel so bad for doing all this, but I was like, hey guys, stop reading whatever book you're reading. Stop doing whatever you're doing. You need to listen to The Secret right now. You need to watch this video on the law of attraction. You need to do this. I started walking around with magnets in my pocket. So that way I could, anytime that I reached my hand into my pocket, I would remind myself that my mind is a magnet and that I need to get on the right frequency of what I want my life to be, right? And it was mostly money focused for me. I really didn't, I cared about other things, right? At that time, I wanted girls, I wanted, travel, I wanted all that stuff, but I really wanted money, right? That was my main focus. So I did that. Then I was starting to meditate. I hadn't meditated since I was, in martial arts when I was a kid. But that could be a whole other video. But so now I'm meditating, right? And now I'm saying affirmations. I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, I am rich. I am successful. I have thousands of customers in my team. I'm saying these affirmations. And look, I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with speaking good to yourself. It's definitely better than speaking negative to yourself. Where you start crossing the line is when you think that because I'm saying these affirmations, now the universe is bending to my will. That's when you kind of start moving into sorcery. It's different when you're trying to just pep yourself up and like give yourself a pep talk, like, John, you could do this, that's different. And that has, that can have positive impact in your life if you hype yourself up before doing something, or, I used to speak on stage in front of people, and I would have to hype myself up before speaking on stage. That's some scary stuff, right? So that I see some positive in that. But then now I'm making vision boards, right? And on my vision boards, I got all this materialistic stuff. I got Batmobiles on it because I really didn't want to. I wanted a Lamborghini, but I really wanted a Batmobile. That's what I want, and I still want a Batmobile today. So maybe I'll attract it. But so I'm doing that stuff. I'm doing the have the whole vision board, and I'm staring at. So they tell you to look at your vision board and envision yourself in the pictures. Envision yourself in these places. Envision yourself with that watch on your wrist. I love watches. And so like I had all these AP watches, the Rolexes. I had all of them up there, and I'm like, yes. bring it to me. Like I'm doing all these things. It sounds so weird now, but at the time everyone else was doing it. So I'm like, it's regular stuff. And then this was probably the craziest thing that I did. Right. So I had like some crystals and stuff, but that, I didn't really, I don't know. I just bought them because people said to buy them. Right.
Yeah.
But so I had a mural on my wall, and in order to hit the top level in the company that I was in, you needed 3,000 customers in your organization.
Okay.
I drew myself, right? Drew a little smiley face of myself. And then so in our back office, the way that customers looked was just like a little circle with the thing next to it with like a little dot to see if they're paying their membership. And so I drew 3,000 of those on this big mural. I bought all this like not cardboard, whatever, poster board, and I spent hours. I think it took me days, and just drew it all out because I thought that by drawing this out, I would be reprogramming my subconscious to attract this into my life. And then after I drew it out, I stared at it every single day and envisioned that if I opened my phone, this is what it would look like, right? And I also had, on that vision board as well, I had pictures of some of my friends who died, and some of them got killed and stuff, and I used that as like motivation as well. But it's interesting because that like made me feel negative. And then I'm looking at this thing, I'm supposed to be positive. And it's just this weird cycle you get on. I call it the secret cycle, in which you have to always be thinking positively. And if a negative thought comes into your mind, God forbid it comes out of your mouth. Oh my gosh, if you say it, that's even worse. That's why you couldn't even tell people if you were going through something. Like if you have a problem in life, you couldn't even confide in anybody, because if you start talking or complaining about what it is you're going through, one, nobody wants you to complain to them because now you're bringing negative vibes my way. But two, you saying that, now you run the risk of the universe being triggered and repelling all of the stuff that you actually want and giving you the things that you're saying. So it was just like it was just a mess, man. And then so I became a Christian through this process. I was still practicing the law of attraction, right? So I wasn't correlating the because I became a Christian through apologetics, right? I knew more about apologetics than I did about the Bible. I knew how the Bible was compiled because that was part of apologetics, and it was also one of my objections to the Bible. Oh, it's man-made, blah blah blah, all that stuff. But so I knew more apologetics than I knew the Bible, but I wasn't correlating the fact that the universe had a beginning, right? I for some reason didn't understand that the law of attraction taught that the universe was eternal, right? But it did trick me into thinking that everything is God, right? Because this is when it started, the new thought side of it started seeping into my brain, because here I am believing that God sits outside of space, time, and matter. But the way that these people are explaining God in some way, it kind of made sense to still be able to believe in this God, but still believe that God is in everything. And because he's in everything, if you raise to that consciousness level, you can now manipulate this universe. So I remember even saying that the reason Jesus was able to walk through walls and walk on water was because he was able to manipulate the molecules and the atoms in like a very new age type of way, right?
Yeah.
And I remember the person I had that conversation with has barely spoke to me ever again. And I didn't get it. It wasn't until I really started digging into, I don't even remember what triggered it. I guess it was the Holy Spirit kind of pulling me like, hey, John, look into this stuff. Like I don't remember the exact time I started looking into the origins of the law of attraction, but that's when I really started discovering, oh, wow, this is some pretty demonic stuff. And that led me into really researching the New Age as a whole, not just the law of attraction.
So yeah, I listening to your story, listening more about law of attraction, this is something I would not have been, I wasn't very familiar with this, because in the circles I ran around with, this wasn't very common at all. What intrigues me is, one, I could see it going two ways. One where, someone doesn't get what they're thinking of. Someone doesn't get what they're thinking of, and they're like, well, I need to think more, feel more. And so they keep doing more and more and investing more money, spending more things, doing whatever they do, becoming more broke. It's like a gambling addiction.
Yeah.
Or in the flip side, they actually do end up getting what they want, and and it's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because they might have got what they wanted because they were thinking positively and were just behaving in a way that, actually would have gotten them the money in the first place if they would have just behaved in that certain manner, instead of trying to associate with this philosophy. I guess almost seeing it being a self-fulfilling prophecy for some people who think positively and therefore have more confidence. And since they have more confidence, they do better.
That's actually very true. I touch on that in the book as well. So I start going through how most people who practice the law of attraction, I'm talking about my personal friends, they've been at this law of attraction thing for 10 plus years. 99% of them are not millionaires. 99% of them are not driving the car that they dream of. They're not living the life that they want to live, yet they still continue to practice it. And I'm not, look, when it comes, like, practically speaking, if you're working on big dreams, it's going to take a long time. Okay.
Yeah.
It can take a long time. So I understand staying focused on something for a sickly extended amount of time. I am like that. Right. But when I look at people who actually do acquire these things, right, and I look at them attributing their success in one way or another to the law of attraction, and then they teach people the law of attraction, I'm like, I'm in a unique position, right, where I have watched people go from zero to millionaire, right? And I have watched people in the same industry not do anything, like not make any money, not get any closer to their dreams, none of that, right? The X factor between the two, it's not the law of attraction, it's the work ethic, right? These people that I have seen go to the top of these companies, these network marketing companies, bro, I thought I worked hard. I did not work hard in comparison to these guys, and I worked pretty hard. These guys are around the clock, sacrificing time from their family, from their loved ones, not taking any vacations, driving hours to a meeting here, hours to a meeting there. It's like, so you're attributing all this stuff to the law of attraction, and you are negating all of this work that you've put in. I watched you. I've seen you fly from state to state to state to state to state to state to state for 2 years straight. And you say, yeah, the universe gave this to me. No, bro, you worked your butt off for it. You worked really freaking hard for this thing. So why would you want to give that credit away to something that doesn't even know you exist? So that's, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because I also noticed that when I started believing in the law of attraction, more importantly, when I just started getting into personal development and working on myself as a person and thinking more positively, before I drifted into the law of attraction, I got into more personal development side of things, thinking more positive just for practicality's sake. Right. And because of that, that was part of the reason why I had so much success quickly. It was because I was easier to be around. I wasn't in, you gotta understand, this is relatively speaking, because I was really difficult to be around at one point in my life. So I think that even though I was more positive, I probably was still really difficult to be around, but I was less difficult than I was before. So people worked with me, right? Like they saw the change in me. So they wanted to be involved in things that I was involved in, because I was changing. I was more positive. I was happier. I was more ambitious, and more willing to help other people as well. So these are all things that can help you be more successful in life. So that shift in especially when the law of attraction first gets its claws into you, you now start being a more positive person, and people respond to that. You are, in a sense, more attractive.
Yeah.
So people want to work with you and be around you. So what you said is so on point.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you can see how the thought process would change behavior, and then that behavior then garners you what you're kind of hoping to get. I mean, obviously, it also can go the other way around, where the thought process and the way you're thinking just makes you want to be not just sit around and think all the time and not do anything, and then you would have the opposite effect. But yeah, wow. So what then led from, like, for you then, what pulled you out of the law of attraction? What you just said, it was sort of just one day you started looking into it.
Yeah.
How long well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it just was like, I guess it was the Holy Spirit just pulling me. He was like, John, you can't do both. Like that's how it felt. And
is it common for people to associate the law of attraction with other religions?
No, it plays a neutral role. So
Okay.
that's what. So another thing that the law of attraction does is, and its proponents, they say that it's neutral. Doesn't matter what faith you're a part of, you can incorporate this into your faith. It's a universal law, like gravity, right? And then they go on to say that science proves the law of attraction, and they start digging into quantum physics and stuff like that. And my main issue with that was, there are so many interpretations of quantum physics and so many theories. And one thing that all quantum physicists agree on is that they don't know why things are happening the way that they're happening in the quantum level. There's predictions that can be made in the quantum realm, but there's a lot of debate on why things happen the way that they do. And quantum physicists are totally cool with that. They're not like die hard, no, this is it, blah, blah, blah. They are totally cool with the fact that there are so many theories and it's such an intriguing study. So I find it very hard to believe that Rhonda Byrne and, people like Joe Dispenza, and I call them the Secret Squad, they have found the one true theory of quantum physics, especially when most quantum physicists disagree with that theory. It's not the most popular one. So them saying things like, oh, science proves the law of attraction, quantum physics proves the law of attraction, you always got to qualify that and say, what do you mean? Which theory of quantum physics proves the law of attraction? Which branch of science proves the law of attraction? Most people have no idea. I'm like, yo, write me out the equations, okay? Write them out for me. Write me out the equation of quantum physics, the theory of quantum physics. Let's bring a chalkboard out. Write me out that equation, and then write me out at least a dozen other theories that contradict that equation and that theory, and show me where the contrasts are and why this theory is better than all these other theories. Most people, unless you are a quantum physicist, can't tell you the difference between different theories.
So how popular is the law of attraction today? Like, is it still a popular movement, or?
So the secret, that itself, right? The reason that I talk about The Secret a lot in this book, the initial hype over The Secret is long gone, right? But it's still, I believe, the most popular law of attraction book. It's over 35 million copies sold, right?
Wow.
Then you have like The Alchemist sold 100 million copies, but that's a little bit different than the law of attraction. It has some law of attraction philosophies in it, but it's also it's a different book. It's more about alchemy. But anyway, I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, so is it popular today? Just type in the hashtag manifestation on Instagram. It's bananas. So the law of attraction, although The Secret is not as popular as it once was, the teachings that are in there have just been copy and pasted into every new law of attraction book, every new law of attraction blog, it's been copy and pasted into the subconscious mind of every law of attraction guru out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is extremely popular today, and it's on the rise. So since I'm in the business world, not as in it as I once was, but I still have all of my friends, all of my network from that. I constantly see them still talking about affirming this, name it and claim it, manifesting my abundant life, all of this stuff. And I'm like, man, you guys been at this for 10 plus years. You still doing this? Like, and it's not just them, it's everywhere. But the thing is that it's also subtle in many areas, right? It's subtle in many ways. There are many professing Christians that hold to some new age beliefs and hold to the law of attraction because they've been convinced that you can do both. And technically you quote unquote can do both. We as Christians have the freedom where we can do things, but we probably shouldn't, And that's what I tell people. I'm like, people get upset at me for talking about this stuff, especially when you're in sales and you need things to motivate people. Like here I am, like debunking one of the key things that people use to motivate people. It upsets people, but I'm like, you guys don't want to know the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to know the truth. And so you have people who mix Christianity and new age spirituality, and they don't even realize they're doing it.
Yeah. And well, I guess what part of this is that I'm assuming normally people don't come out and just say this is the law of attraction. I'm assuming a lot of people just kind of spit out these platitudes or these principles,
Yes.
and then this sort of just gets incorporated with other things. Like I can definitely see this often not being labeled a philosophy as much as just subtle messaging within some sort of corporate push. Because like, is this the way you're making it sound almost sounds like a corporate philosophy that you can find in a lot of businesses and stuff like that, like their trainings and things.
Yeah, it's it goes more under the teachings. You'll hear the teachings more than you might hear the actual words law of attraction. Prime example is Helena Blavatsky. She's never, to my knowledge, and I did a lot of digging, said law of attraction, but her teachings teach the law of attraction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have people teaching the law of attraction without ever saying it, and also there's many people who will not say it just because there's some baggage that can come with it.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, you have other people who freely use the term law of attraction and don't think twice of it. They don't question it at all because they have had some self-fulfilling prophecies. And also there's some things that start happening, right? When you start believing in the law of attraction, I forget what it's called, but prime example, when I wanted a silver BMW, there was a promotion that you could get where I could earn a silver BMW, right? So when I found out about that promotion, I started seeing silver BMWs everywhere, right? And I'm like, I wasn't necessarily in the law of attraction at that point, but I was like, oh, I'm seeing this everywhere. I'm getting signs. I thought it was like signs, right? And when you're in the law of attraction, deep in it, and you're focusing on a goal, I forget what it's called. It's something that your brain does, and it's doing it all the time in which, we have all of this information that we are picking up, and our brain filters it in a way where it filters out the things that aren't necessarily that important in the moment, right? Because if it didn't, we would go crazy. We would have like panic attacks because we would be in sensory overload. So I forget the technical term for it, but it filters that. But when you plant something in your mind and you make your mind aware of this thing, now you start seeing it more. It's like playing, you remember Punch Buggy? I don't know, maybe you don't.
Yep.
Yeah, all right. So Punch Buggy, right now, I would never notice a, a, a Volkswagen buggy next to me while I'm driving. I just wouldn't, right? But if I was playing punch buggy, I'm gonna see them everywhere, right? And it's because you have made your brain aware of it. So people take something that is just a biological thing that your brain does to help you function in life. They take this and they say, yo, I know the law of attraction is real because when I started focusing on a red Jeep, I now see red Jeeps everywhere.
Yeah.
And this confirms the law of attraction for them. So that's one way in which it's an instant confirmation that this is real. Because the second you start focusing on something, your brain automatically starts putting that at the forefront and you start noticing it. And this is automatic confirmation that this is the universe giving you signs and you are attracting those punch buggies to you.
It's just very interesting to me that the law of attraction, it actually it sounds very simple philosophically. Now, I'm not saying it makes sense. I'm just saying it sounds very simple philosophically, with just the added catch that it actually just requires a lot of you from a mental energy and behavioral energy side of things. Like, it doesn't actually sound like there's too much complex philosophy that goes on within the law of attraction.
Yeah.
Am I mistaken? Like, it sounds really simple.
It's simple on the surface. And that's the issue. It's so simple, right? We were talking about this before of stumbling blocks for people to achieve something, right? The less stumbling blocks that there are for somebody to achieve something, the more likely they will be to go after it, right? But if they think that they're stumbling blocks, then they won't go after it. So if I presented to you the law of attraction like this, and I said, yo, LT, here's the law of attraction. Okay. Your brain sets off, your mind sends frequencies into the universe. And because the universe actually is God, and God is the universe, but also is kind of like a machine that responds to whatever you send to it. Now your thoughts going out there are triggering the universe. And if you're thinking about a specific thing, the universe is now going to start drawing it to you. And the reason is because of quantum physics. And in quantum physics, we have something called the double slit experiment that requires an observer. And when an observer's not there, it changes things. And the particle will move from one slit to another or be in a different location. And then that shows that by us observing something, we're actually bringing it into existence. And since, if you focus on it, that's essentially you observing your goals. If I presented it to you like that, you'd be like, what the heck is this dude talking about? But if I just simply say, hey man, what you focus on expands, make sure that you focus on your goals and the universe will bring it to you. And I just leave it at that. I have now planted a seed in your mind.
Yeah.
So it's a simple, and I have the same issue when people present the gospel, right? Like, listen, if I'm telling you that you got to put your trust in Jesus Christ in order to be saved, I'm not doing this whole deep theological dive in the, we had this conversation, on our panel, like, hey, if I got to tell you the gospel right now, like, I'm not going through all of like the Nicene Creed and all of that. Like, I'm just not, I'm sharing the gospel with you. In order for you to be saved, you got to put your faith in the finished work of Christ on that cross. He died for your sins. Trust in him for your salvation. We can get into the theological stuff later on. The simple presentation is what gets somebody to buy, right?
Yeah.
And that's what the law of attraction is. It's a simple presentation that gets you to buy. And then when you buy, they start selling you on the other things.
Okay. I think that overall is a pretty good summary of law of attraction. I think we covered a lot there. We covered a little bit about your story. I think in the next portion, the paid portion on Ko-fi, which you can go support me there, if you like what we do here, and also any support will help me do more travel videos, which you guys all seem to like. So I think we'll just go deep dive into some of those more maybe complex stuff. I would like to talk a little bit more about how they defend it. I know you're talking about quantum physics here and stuff. I would like to talk more about maybe the apologetics of law of attraction and stuff like that. but you have to be a member to go there. So to those
And
who
wait.
Oh.
And we will also talk about how it's infiltrating the church. So don't miss that.
There we go. All right. We'll talk about how it's infiltrating the church. So let's cut to that. For all those who will not be able to see it, go out there and light the world. For those who do, stick around. So, Jon Clash. All right. So quantum physics, it always intrigues me when people, they use something like quantum physics, something that the average layperson knows nothing about, and uses that as proof. It's actually pretty common for people, I realize, to defend things, especially either religious concepts, philosophical concepts, by appealing to either research or fields of study that you literally need to be an expert in to even really get a good comprehension of what it's about. So what sort of defenses do law of attraction do people do to defend it from a logical standpoint? So they use quantum physics. What other ways would they approach it to try to defend their belief?
So they use a lot of word salads, right? That's it. But then they also do exactly what you just said. They expect you to be too stupid to understand that you can look into this for yourself. They appeal to their own authority, and then they appeal to the authority of something like quantum physics, right? Which is a fallacy in itself, the fallacy of appealing to authorities, right? So that's one thing that they do. I wrote in my book, there's a chapter called The Wu-Tang Clan, right? And it's about how they do this and how they, I call it throwing smoke bombs, right? So I don't know, have you ever seen The Dark Knight Rises?
I think so.
All right. So there's a scene in which Batman meets Bane for the first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Batman throws these smoke bombs at him, and Bane is like, oh, theatricality and whatever. And he's like, they're good tools against the uninitiated, but we are initiated, right? So he's saying that these smoke bombs ain't gonna work on me because I had the same training you had, right?
Yeah.
So these gurus will throw quantum physics smoke bombs at you because they know you're not trained in quantum physics. They're not even trained in quantum physics. And then another thing they do is they'll pull somebody like a John Hagelin, who is did a brief stint at CERN and now teaches at like a mystical school. So they'll say, oh yeah, this is a professor in quantum physics who, is here to teach us how the law of attraction is proven true by quantum physics. But he doesn't even teach at an accredited school, but to us, we hear Dr. Jon Hagelin, quantum physicist, and we say, tell me more, doc. We don't question it, right? Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Dude's a doctor because he's a chiropractor. He's not a quantum physicist, but we listen to them because they're in a position of authority and they know more about it than we do.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one thing that they do. And in the book, I go through different ways of how to defuse different smoke bombs that they throw at you. So one of the things that they do is they contradict themselves a lot, right? A lot. And one of the ways they do this is their explanation of the universe. They'll say that the universe is actually a universal mind, right? And nothing can exist without that universal mind. So, and then also everything is energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, but you create energy with your thoughts and you create energy with your words. But how can we create energy with our thoughts and words if energy cannot be created or destroyed? How can the universe exist if nothing can exist without the universal mind existing before it in order to bring it into creation? Like they say all these things that just, when you start peeling it back, you're like, wait, none of this makes sense when you put it all together. It sounds good separately, But when you put it together, you're like, wait, now hold up. But they will say it so fast and so slick that the average person does not catch it. So that's one of the ways that they do it. Then they appeal to authority of, people from the past. They'll say, oh, Abraham Lincoln believed in the law of attraction. Shakespeare believed in the law of attraction. And Beethoven believed in the law of attraction. And they say these things, but they don't ever provide a source for why they're saying this stuff. So I have a chapter called False Claiming, in which I go through, in the book, The Secret, they say Plato, Jesus, all of these different figures from the past believed and taught prosperity and believed in the law of attraction and taught the law of attraction. So I was like, let me look into this. And so I looked at some of these quotes that they attribute to some of these people from the past, and they're just completely taken out of context, right?
Yeah.
And one of them was so Abraham Lincoln said there needs to be there has to be a universal mind or a collective mind behind it all, right? And that, when I read that on the surface, I'm like, dang, that does sound pretty new age-ish and pretty law of attraction-ish. But what I didn't realize is that he was writing a letter to somebody, and that's just smack dab in the middle of a letter. And when you read the whole entire letter, he's talking about how, hey, we need to be, in communication here. We need to be, having conversation with each other. We need a universal mind in this conversation, basically just a universal train of thought. And I'm like, yo, they really just took this thing out, say, yeah, look at what Lincoln said, and boom, now law of attraction. Then they also do this with Bible verses, ask and you shall receive. They do that stuff, completely ripping it out of context. We don't even need to go into the context on that, because people on your channel already know that is not a law of attraction mantra, that's just not. Then you have, so they do a lot of appealing to authority, and they'll have the quotes completely out of context. And then all you got to do is dig into it. There's quotes that they attribute. There's one that I don't have in the book that I've seen floating around New Agers. Says Albert Einstein said, the medicine of the future will be frequency. And I'm like, when I saw that, I'm like, there's no way Albert Einstein said that. So I went digging, and you cannot find Albert Einstein saying it anywhere except on law of attraction websites. So this is what they do.
Wow. It's definitely probably one of those things too, where that phenomenon happens where someone quotes something, someone else quotes it as reliable, and then eventually it's everyone's quoting each other. But it all starts kind of sense back to someone who wasn't even attributing it properly. Now now, do they ever appeal to history at all? Like, I don't know, like, in what ways would they appeal to history?
Well, they say that this philosophy was first written in stone. They talk about the emerald tablet as above, so below. They talk about how that is the law of attraction, right? They appeal to it being hidden, right? One of the first things in the book says this has been hidden by the leaders in the past, and so they could keep people in control and all this stuff. And I'm like, what leaders? How far into the past? Where are you getting this information? What is your source? What were they leaders of? They say these things that on the surface you're like, ooh, that's deep, but they don't back it up with anything. Now they also appeal to they make a fool out of biblical study, like just an absolute mockery of it, saying that everyone from Abraham to Isaac, Jacob, like these were all they were prosperity preachers. Moses was a prosperity preacher. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Like Genesis, just straight up, Genesis is a descriptive book. It is describing something that happens. There is no 5 steps from Abraham of how to be rich. That it's not in there, right? So to say that Abraham was a prosperity preacher, no, he was prosperous, but that's because God blessed him, right? His family was prosperous because God blessed his family, right? Then they make these claims. Then they say that Jesus was a millionaire. And I'm like, bro, have you even read the Bible? They tell you to read this series called The Millionaires of the Bible. And in my book, I'm like, hey, here's a crazy idea. How about instead of reading this Millionaires of the Bible series, you just go read the Bible, okay? Because this is where we get our information on these people's lives. This is the primary source for their lives. You know, Jesus said that the Son of Man doesn't even have a place to lay his head, right? He preached on borrowed boats. You know, he slept at people's houses. This dude was from Nazareth, right? When Nathaniel found out that the Messiah was from Nazareth, he was like, what good comes from Nazareth? You know, that's just a look into the economic status of the historical Jesus. Now, he is the most rich person in the universe when you really peel it all back to everything is his. But that's not what they mean when they say that Jesus was a prosperity preacher.
I mean, I guess that's a good transition then into how is this New Age philosophy entering into Christianity specifically, like within the church and stuff, as you mentioned?
Yeah, definitely. So it's subtle, but to people who study their Bible, it's obvious, right? To your average everyday Christian, you're probably not going to notice it. But you and I, and the people who are listening in, they're probably aware of this. The name it and claim it stuff, right?
Okay.
Word of faith, right? If you dig into the word of faith movement and you dig into its history, it comes from E.W. Kenyon, who went to Emerson College at a time where New Thought and mysticism was running rampant through that college. And so those teachings were inspired by Phineas Quimby, right? So this is going all the way. If you follow the essentially the money trail, you know, if you follow it all the way back, it goes back to New Thought, mysticism, and you know, word of faith. Not everyone in the word of faith, but the majority of word of faith.
Yeah.
They're afraid to say anything negative. They believe that your words have power. They also teach, many of them, that when Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, they could speak things into existence, right? And when men fell, we lost that ability. But when you put your faith in Christ, you now regain access to the ability to speak things into existence.
Where do they even garner that from, though? Like, how do they even make that work?
I have absolutely no idea. Like, I've really searched and tried to find it, but I can't. I think it comes from little places of, you know, you are the one who speaks things as if they are, you know, like these little snippets that you can pull from the Bible, and they attribute that to, since now we are brothers and sisters in Christ, we have the same powers that that God himself has, right? So because we are little gods. That's another thing that they teach. We are little gods. So if we are little gods, we have access to the same power that God has, right? And since Adam and Eve were essentially little gods, because they didn't die, right, until they ate from the forbidden fruit, you know, that essentially means that we are now like them, and we are now like Christ, and we are now like God. And then they also treat faith as a force, right? So when you have faith in something, you are activating the faith force that is going to bring that from God to you. So it's kind of like it's basically the analogy that New Agers use, where your thoughts are a frequency that go out into the universe, and that frequency attaches to whatever that frequency is and brings it right back to you. So it's the same thing. Your thoughts and your faith in the word of faith movement are attracting to you the blessings of God, right? And if you think negatively, you're taking yourself off of that faith force. If you speak negatively, you're taking yourself off of that faith force. That's why you see people like Kenneth Copeland in these crazy videos where he's like, hair grow, you know, you see him doing that stuff. That's because they teach you that what you say and what you feel activates the faith force that brings into fruition the things that you say. You can create out of nothing.
And I mean, I guess moving even beyond just the like law of attraction stuff, would you say New Ageism as a general whole is slowly just infiltrating into church more generally, maybe even outside of the word of faith,
Yeah.
outside of those what we may call more crazy teachers? Like, do you think New Ageism as like a general practice is just seeping into things?
Well, yeah, I mean, think about how many people adhere to their horoscopes. Leo season, Scorpio season, you know, these are new age practices. And you can't go 5 miles without bumping into a Christian who believes that stuff, right? So there was a Pew Research study that was done in which they surveyed, I forget the amount of Christians, but it was a lot. And they asked them for, it's in the forward of my book. Josh Peck wrote the forward, and he wrote a book called The Second Coming of the New Age, him and Stephen Bancars, and they just like dug into everything New Age. But anyway, the Pew Research paper survey asked Christians if they just believed 4 things from New Age, right? It was horoscope. Do you believe that spiritual energy lies in everything? Do you believe in reincarnation? And I forget the 4th one, but and 65% of professing Christians held to one of those beliefs. So those are just 4 of the New Age beliefs. There's thousands of New Age beliefs. So if 65% of Christians believe at least one of those 4 New Age beliefs, it is not only creeping into the church, it is in the majority of the church.
And how do you exactly think this became to be this way? Like, what makes you think this happened to be like
Ignorance.
this?
Ignorance. That's really it. It's ignorance. Most Christians aren't as into it as you and I. You know, they're just not. They go to church for what they can get out of it, and they do these New Age practices for what they can get out of it, and they check off the box. And not everybody, you know, this is one of the beautiful things about the saving grace of Christ, is that you don't have to be a theologian to be saved, you know, and you can do these practices in ignorance and you're still saved. It's just you should not be doing them, right? If you want to live a full, abundant life in the way that Christ defines abundance, you know, fruits of the Spirit abundantly showing in your life, then you can't be practicing these things because you're opening doorways to the demonic. You know, you're drinking from the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons at the same time. Paul warns against that. And he also calls sorcery in Galatians, I believe, chapter 5, he calls it a work of the flesh. So this is sin, what you're participating in. You may be ignorantly participating in it, but it's a sin to participate in this stuff. And I think people do it just because they're ignorant. You know, I was doing it for a long time. When I first became a Christian, I was into the word of faith stuff. I was into the prosperity gospel. I was, you know, really, I thought that by me believing in God now, I was going to get blessed financially because that's what I was being told. And it wasn't until I woke up out of that and I realized, like, wow, this is so wrong. You know, Joel Osteen, one of the most popular quote unquote Christians out there, he has a book called The Power of I Am.
Yeah.
Like, and then people defend this guy. You know, I have so many people that when I talk bad about Joel Osteen, they're like, well, you know, people are getting saved in his church. I'm like, yeah, they're getting saved despite him, not because of him. His teachings are dangerous. You know, he wants you to believe in these New Age spiritual teachings. So he's teaching you to sin.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing some of Joel Osteen's books before, and none of them ever struck me as anything too theologically sound. Like, specifically, like, you know, I think the ones like 7 Ways to a Happier Life or something like that, and different things where it definitely seemed to appeal to your just fleshly desires and your senses and things like that.
Yeah.
So it looks like we are approaching almost 9:30 here. Do you have any concluding thoughts, any concluding things to say?
I would say first, if you are listening to this right now, just thank you for supporting one of my brothers in Christ. Thank you for supporting his ministry. It's difficult sometimes to want to do more in this area of our lives, and we have all of these other obligations and all these other things that we have to do. We got to provide for our families, we got to keep a roof over our head, we have to put food on the table. And so the fact that you guys that are listening now are financially supporting a ministry, I just want to say thank you. Even though you're not supporting mine, you're supporting LT's, and that to me is just, it's so incredible when people find somebody whose content that they like and they believe in their mission so much that they financially support it. And because you work hard for your money. So I just want to say that. And no, LT did not ask me to say that. That was me.
I mean, I appreciate it. Thank you, Jon, for the kind words. And for everyone out there listening, go check out Jon's channel. All that stuff will be in the description below. Check out the book, The Law of Attraction, and all that good stuff. And if you are here, thank you for supporting this channel and all that we do here as we continue to try to grow out there and learn more about this world. Thank you, everyone. And to you as well, go out there and light the world.